Most people think change happens when they decide to change, but that's not where change actually begins. Change begins at a much smaller moment, almost invisible, the moment a pattern is interrupted, because every human life is built on repeating loops: thought, feeling, action, reward, repetition. And you don't transform a life by thinking differently once. You transform it by breaking that loop in real time. You are a collection of patterns, not random behavior. Most of what you do is not random. It is patterned. You wake up in similar ways. You respond to stress in similar ways. You handle boredom in similar ways. You avoid discomfort in similar ways. You seek relief in similar ways. These patterns feel like personality, but they are often just repeated responses that have become automatic. And because they are automatic, they run before awareness even enters. A pattern only has power until it's noticed. Patterns thrive in invisibility. They operate best when they are unconscious, because when something is unconscious, it cannot be questioned in that moment. It just happens. But the moment you notice a pattern while it is happening, something changes. Not externally at first, but internally, because awareness interrupts automation. The real breakpoint is the moments of recognition. The most important point in change is not motivation, it is recognition. I am doing it again. That moment creates a gap, a pause, a small space between impulse and action. And in that space, something powerful becomes possible. Choice. Without recognition, there is no choice, only reaction. Most people only see patterns after they finish them. A common experience is realizing behavior only after it is complete. I should not have done that. I did it again. Why did I react like that? But by the time reflection happens, the pattern has already completed its cycle and nothing changes yet. Real transformation begins when recognition happens earlier, during the pattern, not after. Interruption is more powerful than resistance. Many people try to change through resistance, forcing themselves not to do something, but resistance alone often strengthens the pattern because attention stays on the behavior. Interruption is different. Interruption breaks the automatic sequence, even briefly, even imperfectly, even partially. And that break changes the direction of the loop. Every pattern has a sequence. No behavior appears instantly. There's always a sequence: trigger, thought, emotion, urge, action, reward. Most people only try to change at the action stage, but the earlier you intervene, the easier the shift. Because small changes earlier in the sequence prevent the full loop from completing. Awareness creates friction in automatic behavior. Before awareness, patterns feel smooth. They flow without interruption. After awareness, something changes. A slight hesitation appears, a moment of questioning, a pause in momentum. That friction is the beginning of change, not because the pattern disappears, but because it is no longer fully automatic. You don't need to stop the pattern completely. One of the biggest misunderstandings about change is that it must be total. Stop everything, fix everything, eliminate everything. But real change often starts smaller, interrupting even part of the loop, delaying the reaction, changing one step, introducing a different response. These small interruptions are enough to begin rewiring. Patterns strengthen through completion. Every time a pattern completes, it reinforces itself, not just the action, but the entire sequence. Trigger becomes more sensitive, urge becomes more automatic, behavior becomes more likely, reward becomes more reinforcing. So, repeated completion strengthens the loop, which means interruption is not optional for change, it is essential. Emotional awareness is often the first break. Many patterns are emotionally driven: stress to reaction, boredom to escape, anxiety to avoidance, frustration to impulsivity. So the first interruption often happens at the emotional level. I feel this happening, instead of immediately acting from it. That awareness alone begins to weaken the automatic chain. The gap between impulse and action is where freedom lives. Every human has a gap between impulse and behavior. Sometimes it is very small, sometimes it feels almost invisible, but it is always there. And in that gap where conscious choice exists, training awareness expands that gap. Not dramatically at first, but enough to notice, and noticing changes everything. Repetition builds new patterns only after old ones are interrupted. You cannot build a new pattern while fully running on an old one. There has to be space, a break, a pause in automatic behavior. That pause allows new behavior to enter the system, and repeated behavior becomes the foundation for new patterns. Identity does not change through insight alone. Understanding a pattern is not enough. Seeing it intellectually is not enough. Transformation requires lived interruption because the identity is formed through repetition, not realization. You change by what you repeatedly interrupt and replace, not just what you understand. Small interruptions compound over time. Each interruption is not just a single moment. It is a signal to the system. This pattern is no longer fully automatic. Over time, these signals accumulate, and the pattern weakens, not immediately but gradually, until what once felt automatic begins to feel optional. Awareness turns reaction into observation. Without awareness, reaction is instant. With awareness, reaction becomes visible, and once visible, it becomes changeable. This is the shift from unconscious living to conscious participation, not perfection, not control, but awareness and motion. A final reflection. A change is not a single decision. It is not a dramatic shift. It is not a sudden transformation. It is a series of interruptions and patterns that once ran automatically. And each interruption creates a small opening, a small space, a small moment of choice. And over time, those moments accumulate into a new direction. Not because you eliminated who you are, but because you stopped unconsciously repeating it in every moment. And in that stopping, something new finally becomes possible, one interruption at a time.